2026, people are building apps, websites, and even games without writing code in the traditional way we used to understand it. There are no longer tutorials, no need to memorize syntax, and no requirement to spend months learning programming before building something real. Instead, people are simply describing their ideas in plain English and working with products that are being generated almost instantly. This new way of building is called vibe coding. And while it may sound like a hype at first, it is very real. However, what most people fail to understand is that this is not the end of coding, but rather the beginning of a completely new way of creating software. And if you misunderstand this shift, you will also misunderstand where the technology is heading. See, traditionally, building software required learning programming languages such as Python, JavaScript, or Java, and developers had to manually write strict instructions for every action a computer performs. Even simple applications required structured, logic, debugging, and careful planning, which made the process slow and highly technical. Because of this complexity, ideas were easy to imagine but difficult to execute. And as a result, many people with great ideas were never able to turn them into real products. Now, however, a major shift is taking place where instead of writing every line of code manually, people can describe what they want in natural language, and artificial intelligence systems can convert those instructions into working software. This does not mean coding has disappeared, but it does mean the way we interact with coding has fundamentally changed. Instead of thinking like someone who writes syntax, you begin with thinking like someone who describes intent, and this transformation is what people refer to as vibe coding. Vibe coding is not a programming language, a framework, or a single tool. Instead, it is a new approach to building software where the focus is on describing the outcome, experience, and feel of a product rather than manually writing every technical instruction. In this process, you are not directly telling the computer how to build something step by step, but instead, you are describing what you want to exist, and artificial intelligence translates that intention into functional code. This means your role shifts from being just a coder to becoming more like a product director who guides the system. To understand this better, imagine you want to build a habit tracking application that reminds you to drink water every hour and tracks your daily progress. In traditional development, you would need to design the user interface, build front-end and back-end systems, create a database, implement reminder logic, and test everything carefully, which could take days or even weeks of work. However, in vibe coding, you can simply describe your idea in natural language, and the AI can generate a working version of the application based on that description. The important part to understand here is that the first result is not the final product, but the only starting point. After the initial version is generated, the real process begins where you continuously refine the product by giving feedback and making improvements. You might ask the system to make the design cleaner, improve the layout, add additional features, fix issues, or enhance the user experience. Over time, this process feels like writing code and more like shaping a product through conversation, where you gradually guide the system until the final result matches your vision. Now, one of the biggest misunderstandings about vibe coding is the belief that coding is no longer necessary. This is incorrect because even though artificial intelligence can generate code, it still requires clear human direction, decision making, and structured thinking to produce meaningful results. If the input is unclear, the output will also be weak, which means that the real skill is not disappearing but shifting from writing code to thinking clearly and communicating ideas effectively. Now, vibe coding is not limited to one platform or company such as Google AI Studio. Instead, it is a broader shift happening across the entire software ecosystem, including AI coding assistants, app builders, automation tools, and development environments. Across all these systems, the same pattern is emerging where natural language is becoming a primary way of interacting with technology, which means this is not just a feature of one tool, but a new layer of software creation itself. For beginners, this shift is extremely powerful because it allows them to build real projects much faster without needing years of technical training, which makes it possible to turn ideas into prototypes in a very short time. For experienced developers, the change is different but equally important. as the role shifts towards system design, architecture, and guiding artificial intelligence to produce better and more scalable solutions. Now, the most important change brought by vibe coding is not just speed, but the balance between ideas and execution. In the past, execution was difficult, so ideas were often limited. But now that execution is becoming easier, ideas and clarity of thinking are becoming the most valuable skills. However, this also creates a new challenge because when everything becomes easy to build, it also becomes easy to build things that are not useful or meaningful, which makes clear thinking more important than ever. So, to conclude, vibe coding does not mean that coding has disappeared, but rather that the way we interact with coding is evolving. Instead of focusing on writing every line of code manually, people are now focusing more on describing ideas, guiding systems, and refining outcomes through artificial intelligence. This shift is turning software development into a more creative and conversational process where thinking clearly and communicating effectively matters more than technical execution alone. Ultimately, vibe coding represents a fundamental shift in who can build software and how quickly ideas can become reality. And we are only at the beginning of this transformation. That's it for this video. If you found this video helpful, do like, share, and comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.